I am Ivan, and I am from Team Smart Ads. Let's get right into it. What will be our agenda? We will have a general introduction, talk about the current state of attribution at bol.com, have a paradigm, see how the paradigm shift will happen, analyze some results, and see some future plans. Now, to start us off, what is attribution? I'm sure most of you are probably not familiar with marketing attribution. So marketing attribution is the practice of determining how much each step in a customer journey contributed to a purchase or conversion relative to the other steps. So we can understand that by looking at this picture below. Here, each circle represents a visit each time that the customer came to the website. And each visit is labeled with the marketing channel that triggered this visit, the channel through which they entered. So the first label on the left is SEA, like paid search, or social, like Facebook. And then on the right side, you see the purchase. And then if we assign a value of €1 to this purchase, then marketing attribution is the process of determining how much money we should assign to each of these channels in between, so that we can kind of gauge how much they are worth to us, and we can also influence the budgets that we can assign to each channel. So in this case, we see that how we split up the individual cents across these channels. Now, why do we need attribution? Well, we need it because more than 2/3 of all conversions have more than one interaction. So it's a very complicated landscape out there, digital landscape. People are seeing things to many devices. So we need to have a smarter system of figuring out what was exactly the trigger for a conversion. And also, even 20% of conversions seem to have more than 10 interactions. So that's a very large number, and we need to be able to handle this. Some common ways of doing attribution are these models, which are called last click, first click, and linear. And they are very simple models. Last click model basically means that you will assign all of the value to the last interaction before the purchase. In our previous example, that would mean €1 will be assigned to that last visit before the purchase. First click is the opposite of last click, so you will assign €1 to the first visit, where the motivation is kind of that first thing that started you on the journey. And linear is proportionally distributing the value across these different visits based on the total amount of visits that you had. So these are very simple models but most of these are really used quite often in general. And at Bol, we also use a simple model, and we also have an issue that multiple truths exist between different channels and even within the same channels. So this is one part of the motivation of things that need to be improved at Bol. And we also have that the central reporting attribution truth is very coarse, and it also has multiple sources based on different data sets, and they're not always aligned with the marketing channels. So we cannot optimize all of these marketing spends as efficiently as we could. And that brings us to the paradigm shift, what we want to change with this whole situation at bol.com. Our main thing is that we are planning to build a dedicated attribution job or service, which will be based on M2 data. So all of the data, all of the truth will be based on M2. And the great thing about that is that M2 is our own proprietary software, and we can extend it as much as we want. We can go as granular as we want, as we need. And we can also base everything on that same truth, that everything will be able to align based on that. And we will also be able to have more complex models, or have parallel models, because currently in the web shop, the attribution is done in a very simple way, and there's also no real clear owner of the logic. So if we are owners of this logic, we can make more complex logic, and we can make much bigger improvements. Now, what was the first step in this paradigm shift? That was already last year in Q2 and Q3, where we replaced the bit export job to bGenius with a data aggregation job in the cloud. Now, this might be a mouthful, but bit was an old piece of software that we had at Bol, and this was using data all from data center, and we needed to replace the software to move to the cloud. And bit was aggregating marketing attribution data and sending it to bGenius, which is an external platform which manages marketing campaigns, and the bidding rules for these marketing campaigns are based on attribution. Now, just for a little bit of context there, bidding in marketing means that whenever you're trying to search for something on Google, there will be an auction behind the screen, and we will be in a bidding war with all of our different competitors to try to get you to click on our ad. And these rules for these biddings are currently managed for Bol by this external platform, and they're quite to a large extent based on the data that we get for marketing attribution. It really guides how we do these bids. Now, a little bit more detail in the actual architecture of this first bit replacement was that on the top you see the old architecture and the below the new one, where the sources were all of the tables that we need, which is SOAR, like for orders or customer development, for knowledge about customers and daily sales. And all of these were in the data center. And then this was being aggregated by bit with a query, and it was sent to the bGenius FTP server, where bGenius would import it into their tool. The new process is all in the cloud, so it's all in the GCP. All of these sources are the equivalent sources from the data center now in the cloud. And we aggregate them all with BigQuery, using BigQuery. We store it in Google Storage. And then we also save it to the bol.com FTPS server. So that's a little bit of an improvement that we did, because now it's on FTPS, so it's a bit more secure. And also it's on our own server. And now bGenius is able to import that from our server. And now we also have it whenever we need it. That was the first step, but that was just a part of infrastructure text that got us going on the whole journey. And now this is a bit, the new part is the second step, which we started in Q4 2019, where we created the base version of the purchase path job in BigQuery. So a purchase path is basically what I showed you before. So these different visits coming together to form a purchase in the end, that's a purchase path. So here on the left, these little colored rectangles, each is a visit, and this constitutes a purchase path. And that's how we call our job, which is currently a batch job. It processes everything in 1 hour, and it is able to write the story data to BigQuery and also apply a very simple attribution model on top and output it to BigQuery as well. And the architecture for this step is, first of all, based on the original data is M2, as I mentioned, and we are using Bigfoot. That's a big thank you to Team 2A, because Bigfoot really helps us get all the data that we need, but without all the query costs that we would have by querying all the M2 data. And also Bigfoot provides it to us live streaming, but inserted into BigQuery. And our job is the purchase path events. And what it does is it creates a history for each individual customer on all the devices, which are these tables below. And they're identified by the visit IDs and the customer IDs, device IDs. And we will make all the history per the customer on all of these and output apply a model on it to BigQuery. Now we also have some analysis from the data we did, and we also made a tool to compare the different models. And what's important to see here is that different models will give you different effects, like linear versus last. You can see these blue bars with a lot of percentage differences compared to which model you use. So it's kind of like just something to show how big differences can be if you use different models. We also had an investigation into more advanced model, which is called a Markov chain model. And Harman mentioned this, but Markov chains are probabilistic models that describe sequence of events, where each event only depends on the probability of the previous event. So if you start, you have a 50% chance of going A to B, and then it only depends on the start. And then in marketing, we just say that all these points are visits with different paid channels, and the final step is either conversion or non-conversion. So we want to see what are the probabilities of getting to a conversion, and what are different probabilities of going from different channels to each other. And some of the results are here, and you can see on the left that we can just get a general feeling for the different ratios between these channels, so we can get a more accurate distribution of value across the channels. And on the right side, you can see the transition matrix, which gives us the idea of how much is probable from going from one channel to the other. And the final piece of analysis we had was that we did a investigation of affiliate marketing partners. We wanted to see where they were usually placed in a path, because these partners are partners that have bol.com links on their websites. And if somebody clicks on those links and gets from those websites to Bol, then they also get part of the revenue. We wanted to see where in the journeys usually these partners were. And this graph shows you a bit this. So the x-axis shows from 0 to 1, where 1 is the end of the journey, 0 is the beginning of the journey. And you can just currently look at the red points. We won't go into the other points, but the red points are always, you can see mostly towards the right, so around 0.8. So this shows that most of these partners are actually more towards the ending of these purchase paths. And then just for the end, the future plans for us, we want to guarantee having 100% of order coverage. We do have 100% of orders for GDPR related, so there are some GDPR complications that we will fix eventually, but they're currently in the way. We also want to be able to apply parallel models on the data, or either all the time or on demand. We at the end want to move towards a streaming solution, which because that solution will be able to provide the data to all parties in real time. And we also want to apply some of these more complex models, like the Markov chain that I showed you, in the job itself, because we were doing it manually. And last slide is that you can always come talk to us for more information in our Hangouts room, send us an email. And we also actually did a podcast, Ernst and I, for the Tech Lab, and you can listen to it by following this link if you want some more information. And with that, I would like to end, see if we have any time for questions, but we did start a bit later, so let's see if we can catch anything.
Great, thanks a lot, Ivan, for your talk. Very nice and insightful. We have a couple questions, actually. Mike says, who determines which model you should use, since choosing a certain model has quite some impact for business departments?
Yes, that's a very good question, and it's one of the biggest issues we will have to tackle, is that in attribution there is no ground truth. There is nothing objectively true about assigning these values between different channels. So one main thing about all of our models is that they will have to be, for one, explainable or understandable, because it will be a lot of communication between the marketing partners and maybe even people higher up. So we need to be able to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and be able to explain it to other people. So this is kind of the idea. It will be a lot of talking, but we want to come to sort of consensus with everybody that everybody's comfortable with. Or if that's not possible, we can try to come to consensus on the largest amount of parties, and then maybe some other individual parties can apply different models based on their use cases. But that's the idea.
I see. Thanks for the reply. We have another one from Buzz. He says, how can the M2 data stream be further improved to make the marketing attribution even better?
Well, thank you for that question, Buzz, because then I can also advertise the need for having it in the app. We are going to have it in the app soon, we hope, and we have very good collaboration with the team, with the M2 team and the app team, and we're in talks with them, and they're very forward with helping us do this. And what they will try to do is they're exploring having more M2 in the app in general. So that's something that just needs to happen anyway. And the good thing is that for us, we think it's not a big ask, because since M2 depends on certain things, there are some very basic pieces of information that we hope will also be able to be helpful for us. And this is having the page URL of the entry to the app. That's the most important for us, because then we can see which marketing channel it was. And we also need to be able to see which HTTP referrer had, and also to have a connection between M2 and the app, so in terms of devices, the IDs. So, and that's hopefully going to be coming soon.
Perfect. Thanks for the reply again. Okay, thank you, Ivan, for your great talk. Marketing strategies are quite important for Bullet.com, so let's continue this discussion in the Google chat room that we have.